Hello,
Hey Steven, what's up?
what's going on?
Not much. So yeah, let's talk about that cube that came out of the sky. Are you near a computer?
No, no, I'm not near a computer right now.
Right on. Well, let me do this. You said that last time we were setting up this show today. I said, you know what? Next time we do one of these, we'll talk about whatever you want to, Steven. So let me just say that. What's going on? What did you want to talk about in these? You know, you said you had some. You're like, well, because I asked you, I was like, let's talk about, some people say Yahweh is really Satan, and you're like, I don't know much about that. I don't want to talk about that. What I'm about is, and then
Well, it's not I'm trying to hide anything. It's just I don't really know that much about the ancient times and what names they use. Like some used El, and that's associated with Bel, and it's complex enough the way it is when you keep it simple between good guys and bad guys. And I just was wanting to talk about things that are going on right now that people really need to see and understand because I believe we are in that end time and there is such a thing as great deception that even the elect could be deceived. So,
and that's what, that's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this, maybe the second or third. Let me stop lying. Probably the second or third. When I first saw this cube thing, I was mesmerized. I was like, that's the coolest looking thing I've ever seen. But then it kicked in what you just said. We are in the times of great deception, and that's exactly what this looks like. Like I propose, let me propose.
here it is, a conspiracy theory.
Project Bluebeam. That's the first thing that came to mind. And I'm not the first one. I heard Gons from Face Like the Sun, his YouTube channel. I heard him talking about that. Like, yeah, it's one of the options. That's the first thing that came to my mind is because the whole Blue Project Bluebeam is people say that it's supposed to. I know I said Bluebeam. People say it's supposed to be what the end goal for that is the theory is that they're trying to fake Christ coming back. Like, so they make it look like Jesus is coming back, and then people get faked out by it, and then they fall for whatever. But
Well,
this
I didn't
looks
I didn't get to see it and I haven't
check.
seen anything about it. It's just weird because we were just talking about that about an hour ago, and he was telling me, "Did you hear what's going on in Texas?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Well, the sky opened up and a cube came out."
Nope.
I said, "A cube like in a square?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, was it photoshopped?" He goes, "Well, I don't know. I don't think so. It's just really weird and everybody's talking about it."
Right.
And so I told him, I said, well, if it was a cube, okay, here's my take on it. If it's a cube, I said they would probably it would be probably some kind of like a hologram or something to where it's a cube for, like the alien guy on TV with the big hair, talking about ancient aliens and stuff. I said it would probably be to say there's a cube and it probably on the corner of it has this silver encased black stone, and I said, so they could say, oh, it's Mecca, it's the Kaaba in Mecca,
Right.
so Allah was some alien being and set this all up down here. So
Right.
like, you just never can tell. But
Yeah.
I'm more concerned of exactly what's inside the Capitol than anything that's coming out of the sky.
Right. But I think
So
factors, and when you talk about CERN opening, you know, they're running this hadron collider right now. God knows what's even going on with that, but the thing is on, and I guess in September is supposed to be when the big collisions happen. I'm not even sure. So if you're listening to this and you know more about that, please let me know. But yeah, CERN is doing its thing, and the whole idea is it's supposed to be creating these portals. It could open up these portals in another dimension. This whole someone has greenlit the whole portals. Everyone's talking about portals. So it all just feels like it all feels very controlled. This thing comes.
yeah, it could be like one of them black holes or antimatter to where they be opening up something they can't control.
Now that is not controlled. What I mean by, let me say, back that up, qualify that. What I meant was controlled is the whole this black cube. No, it's not a black cube. Let me just say that because you haven't seen it. It's not black, but it looks very weird. It looks like a video game. There's nothing else can be said about it. It just looks like nothing else. And then it's here's it. Oh, this thing came out of the sky. Where did this information come from? Maybe it was maybe someone was paid to do this. Maybe it is a hoax. Da, 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 who knows? You can't trust anything, is what I'm saying. Like you said, these are times.
Well, I think the interesting thing that you've stated is the thing about portals and doorways and gateways and stuff like that, as far as people talking about ancient aliens or whether they're ancient beings being able to come and visit the earth and control the earth and possess men's bodies and stuff, there is, and I say this wholeheartedly, there is portals and there are stairways and there's places going up and there's places going down. And Washington and Indianapolis was designed for that sole purpose of this opening a doorway. And the Indiana State House, the House Chambers itself, has the false door. If you get into Egyptology and some of the high magic they had,
Yeah, you
the,
you left us off last podcast saying, hey, yeah, if you ever want to talk about Egyptian high magic or something like that I'm an expert on, so let's do that. Let's talk about it right now if you want to. But I think the whole purpose of what you were saying earlier. So let me not drive us into further more rabbit. Let me say this: I don't like the phrase rabbit trails. It's rabbit holes where I come from. Rabbit holes. I don't want to dig another rabbit hole here. The purpose that you wanted to come into this with was, and let me say this too, what does God want us to be doing right now? You know, we might not be here tomorrow, so let's do all that we can to spread, the gospel, et cetera, et cetera. So take it from there, Stephen. I want to hear you go because I know you have a lot of expert knowledge, and that's why I have you on the show, man. I value your knowledge and your insight.
well, I'll try to give you everything that I got upstairs my cranium here because it's pretty deep. It's profound and it's like a sci-fi movie that you wouldn't even dream possible. But Indianapolis and Washington, D.C. was both designed by the same people for the same purpose. And basically, when Napoleon got the Rosetta Stone and was able to decipher the hieroglyphs, they realized the secret to immortality. And it involved three different things. And this is what I find interesting about Revelation. It talks about mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Okay, that's the three titles. They also call it Babylon, Egypt, and Rome. Okay, so you got to remember that this final kingdom is called Babylon, Egypt, and Rome. And the significance of that is because they used a Babylonian foundation. Okay, there's three different things here we can talk about. We start with the foundation. The Babylonian foundation was where they took and made magic squares. And in my YouTube
That's the
videos,
deal with these magic squares. That's something like if I do the magic squares, I know that there's numbers in each one and stuff. Like, what does that do for you? I know it's an occult thing that does work. Well, what does it do? What's the point of building it
okay,
on the magic square?
a little history. Benjamin Franklin said he made the most magical of all magical squares, which was a 16 by 16. Each
That's as big as
magic
it's been.
Well, no, he was just saying that I think to divert the attention from what the real important magic square was the actual what I call the philosopher's stone. The
Right.
philosopher's
Well,
stone is actually a Babylonian clay tablet that shows you how to make these talismans, which are these magic
so you
squares.
lead into gold. That's the whole philosopher's stone. That's what that's what the
Well, the alchemists tried to say that they could use it to make base metals into gold, like turn lead into gold.
right.
And
Literally,
basically,
it's
what
a
it
medical.
was,
It has a
well,
whole.
what it was is giving man the ability to be able to see into the future because you could become very wealthy if you could see down the road and see into the future.
I've never heard that about the future thing, because from what
Well,
I
see, the
yeah.
Babylonian magic square was a 13 house birth chart, and
Right.
and in my videos, it's going to be hard to try to explain it all, just over the radio. But good thing
I
I
know,
got
well, we're gonna,
two
me and you are gonna do this every week, so we hear about more next time. And honestly, this, we did talk about this on the Chris Brake show, well, on that show too. So yeah, I mean, this stuff is take your relax. You know what I mean? Don't you don't have to preface it with stuff like just do this. Best
Okay.
explain it. And I know I'm gonna keep interrupting you, but I'm interested. Babylon Magic Squares. What's the deal with
Yeah, and they're actually called talismans. What they did is they had each planet has a magic square ascribed to it. There's 3x3s, 4x4s, 5x5, 6x6, and each one is attributed to a certain planet. And what they did back in the days of alchemy and black magic or whatnot, they would take the metal, whichever the magic square represented. Like the 6x6 square is the sun square. It's attributed to the sun. So they would get gold and they would inscribe it with this 6x6 magic square. Okay.
hmm
And what that does is it actually opens up portals. It actually opens up doorways. The 6 by 6 square is the only square that totals 666.
You
It
put
is
that onto the bar of gold.
on the bar of gold, and they have like the moon square, and I've got a list of all the different planets and all the different magic squares attributed
Right.
to planets, to metals, and it's all the alchemical process, but it's a very ancient, uh, uh, very little known secret, and they're
That
also called
today,
talismans.
can I put a magic square on my TV and it makes it like magical or something? I mean that's
No, now, here's the whole thing about magic squares. The purpose of the magic square is to open up your mind, the part of your mind that you don't use. It
hmm
opens your mind up to like four-dimensional thought.
that sounds really
Okay.
cool, but I imagine as Christians we're supposed to not do that, correct?
Well, you're not supposed to go into astrology. I mean, if somebody looked at my libraries and they saw the different books I got, they'd say, "Well, he was in the black magic and the occult." And I'm the kind of person that believes that, once you're saved and your blood covered, you're good to go. And knowledge isn't something that you should be afraid of. It's not that I'm practicing or trying to find an alternate way into heaven, which was the ultimate
Right.
purpose of these guys and their
That's
alchemical
they are. Yeah,
process.
that is their goal. They do all of this stuff because they want to weasel into heaven. Like we're, our purpose is just investigatory, I guess. But yeah, they say like, oh, so Christians, oh, we have to stay away from that. Not necessarily. I think the other day I was thinking, it's like maybe God could open up those 3, 4 dimensional things in your brain without you having even to use a magic square. You know what I mean? Like there's always a
Right.
positive to the satanic stuff. It's like it's not that God can't, oh, we get to, as a Christian, I miss out on magic black square, fun stuff, and da-da. Not necessarily. You just don't have to use the magic squares. That was an interesting thought to me. So, what's the purpose of the magic square, and do they still use them today? Obviously, they do. They built downtown on one, right?
Right. They built actually the whole Indiana territories. They laid out all the territories in 6 by 6 squares,
That's
sun
insane.
squares.
And like, that's unheard of, right? Like they didn't do that anywhere else. Like London doesn't do that, right? Or is
Um, well, Egypt did it. The
okay,
pyramids in Egypt are built on 7 by 7 Mercury squares.
okay,
That's the foundation. There's 13 acres, and they made them into 7 by 7 magic squares. That's the foundation. That's the base. Because you got to understand, a magic square can only be made in the mind of man. Because in the video, I show you exactly what I'm talking about. Because in order to make a magic square, you start off, say a 3 by 3, a real basic one. You start off and put a number in one square. The next square, you go up and to the right to place the number two. And then you would go
have
up.
you made magic squares?
Pardon me?
Have you made a magic square?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
they're see they're real simple. See,
Crazy.
here's what they really call the magic. Mathematicians use them in schools and colleges, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who know about magic squares because of the mathematical properties of it. Because what it is no matter how many squares you got, each row across and down have to total the same. Okay, so if he was making a magic square, and this is why Benjamin Franklin was bragging, I made a 16 by 16 magic square. Like he's so smart.
It's like
And
a
it's just
game.
a
Yeah.
it's a secret. No, it's a trick. It's
It's
a
a
secret. All
trick.
you have to do is put a number in and
Mhm.
then go north and east, and that's where you put your second number. In other words, you go up one square and over one square, and that's where you put number two. And then you go up one square and over, and you put number three. Okay, when you come to the edge of your paper, okay, now picture this and follow along. You got a 3 by 3 square. If you made a 3 by 3 square right now, okay, just make a little 3 by 3 square, okay, and you start, say, like in the middle, in the bottom row, you put a one. And then
Right.
you go up to the second row, you go up and over, and then you put a number two. Okay, to put number three, you'd have to go up and over to put the three, but you're at the end of the paper.
Right.
So what you do is your mind folds that piece of paper to where it comes around and
Right.
makes a cylinder to where you bring it on around. And then when you get to the top of the paper and there's no more room for the numbers, you would fold it, horizontally and make a tube, and you bring the number on up. So the only way you can actually make a magic square is the man's mind that's able to actually do this folding process, horizontal and vertically in order to place the numbers. And then once you get the square all filled out, you'll find that all your rows horizontally and vertically add up to the same. And
That's insane.
that's what they use as magic square as far as explaining it's a magic square. But there's a lot more to it when you go back into it. The ancients used it, the alchemists used it, the Egyptians used it for their foundation, America used it for its foundation. And the troubling thing about this, as far as the 13 colonies and Washington, D.C., and the Indianapolis connection, is they made these Indiana territories. The foundation was a 6 by 6 sun square, which is you got a 6 by 6 sun square as a foundation. That's the grid. And that totals 666. So you have a 666 foundation for the city to begin with. That's your Babylonian
The
foundation.
city's built. They didn't build it on rock and roll. Well, maybe they did. Rock and roll is 666. That's what our sound was built on.
Well, it's just odd. It's just odd a Christian nation would be involved with this Babylonian Egyptian
No,
high magic,
no,
you know.
detract a bit because you did mention that. What, like, I was reading the Declaration of Independence today. That was quite interesting. But, it's we hold these truths to be self-evident that every man is created equal. And by not freestyling here, messing it up, but created by their Creator with inalienable rights. How does that fit into making stuff on 666 foundations? Because it sounds like some of the people, at least that are on that Declaration of Independence, had a noble goal, right? I mean, and I've
Oh
heard
well, yeah. There's a lot of people that ask me, well, how can you say what you say and still say that you're for the Constitution? And I said, well, basically,
I
the
don't know what's
Protestant separatists.
something, but yeah, why would how can you do that?
Well, because Protestant separatists, the
That's
Constitution
your
and then
group,
the laws of
Protestant
governing,
separatists.
the good laws, the ones that acknowledge that your rights and freedoms come from God, those were actually originally Protestant separatists. The ones who came over here originally were Protestant separatists, and people think that's some kind of new movement. That was the movement that was here before the colonies ever got started. Was the
That was the
Protestant
movement that
separatists?
started this whole shebang of America. Is that what you're saying? The people that came over here to try to get away from religious persecution over there
Right.
in England, that came
And
over
Frank,
here, Protestant separatists. Is that right?
Exactly.
That's what
And
you.
Franklin and Jefferson plagiarized most of their ideas and just changed some wording or whatnot. And then they claimed that it was, and the Freemasons did this because they were all Masons. The Freemasons claimed that it was their enlightenment that
Right.
gave you the Constitution. So how could you be for the Constitution and be anti-Mason? It's because, well, most of those principles, especially the ones acknowledging that your rights and freedoms come from God, was a Protestant separatist origin, and Jefferson plagiarized it. And that's when they put in nature's God and the God of nature. Have you ever wondered why you read that and it says nature's God and the God of nature?
Is that in the Declaration or that's in the Indiana State poem?
No, that's in the Declaration. That's the
Uh,
original one. It
uh,
talks about endowed by their Creator, the God of nature and of nature's God.
yeah,
Okay, well the God.
let me come clean here. All I did was I put Declaration of Independence. We'll do it right now into Google, uh, and then it comes back with an answer. Like there's results. Oh, I did on Independence. And then sometimes Google, if you put math into Google, like what's 10 times 10, it'll tell you the answer to it. And it didn't do it this time, but last time it did. And anyway, it left that part out of it, honestly, or oddly enough, because I would imagine that Google's in on the machine. I imagine they would have somehow skewed it to where it took that creator thing out, but it didn't do that. But I'm sure they will now that I've put it out there for them to hear. Okay, continue, please. That's insane. So from
Well,
the get-go of the country, there's been Protestant separatists, and then there's been this group of people who are trying to undermine the whole thing.
well, the Freemasons were basically, see, you basically had Protestant and Catholic. You had,
Well, some
like England and the Spanish Armada, and they got caught in the storm, and England was becoming strong, and then you had the French that was with the Pope. Okay, basically, here's the whole thing about Washington, and this is the cold hard facts. It wasn't about a tax on tea because it was about taxes. The taxes that were taxed now, we should be revolting in the street and have a revolution. I mean, if that was what it was really about.
I
If it
love
was about taxation without representation, then we should be revolting in the streets because right now we're being taxed and our tax dollars are beginning to Islamist and enemies of ours and our Constitution and our Christianity.
what was going on
Okay.
at the Tea Party. I don't know this, and hopefully maybe some listeners could bear with me, or they don't know either. What was the tax rate? It was all about taxes, I guess, right?
Well, it was an insignificant tax equal to about 60 cents today, okay, on tea. That was just a front, just like taxation without representation. The whole thing about the revolution
What is
was
it?
about George Washington, Hancock, all those people that you hear about as far as the founding fathers.
The
They
good
were land company owners. In
slavery.
other words, they made money off of, and this is how they would do it. They would go out and they would survey the land, and then they would make a map of that land. Then
Mm.
they would make a copyright of that picture or a patent of it, and then they would sell that as a deed for the land. So the important thing was not to own the land, but to be able to speculate and survey it. And Washington was a surveyor. Okay. And this is where the whole revolution began. Washington, I don't know if a lot of people know this, was a British officer.
Washington,
Okay.
the British officer.
A British
We,
officer.
we,
Okay.
we were detracting from. Protestant separatists are trying to get away, and then here comes a British general, or what did you say?
Well, the British are Protestant. Okay,
They're what?
the the British are Protestant.
Okay.
Okay, so the original
Background.
the king, the Protestant king, was Protestant, and the colonies were Protestant. There was two-thirds of the majority here were loyalist to the Protestants and to the king. You only had one-third which was not loyal to the king, and they was loyal to Washington, and they was loyal to paganism and Freemasonry and the Pope.
Was it
And see,
really
that's where
one third?
what's that?
Was it really one third? Is that
That's one-third, yeah.
that's crazy because that's one third of the demons, angels
Cast out.
in heaven.
Exactly. And when you understand what the rebellion against the throne was on earth, it's a replication of the rebellion in heaven.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing. I'm glad you caught that. And that's why the Masons call themselves the 33rd degree, because they were the one-third, which is another
Okay.
interesting thing.
33 and the third record spin at 33 and the third. I thought that's kind of weird.
Yeah. You'll find everything like in Indiana is like 33 degrees because it's all about the 33. Anyhow, these founders were land company owners, okay? And so the Royal Proclamation of 1763 from the
Not,
Protestant crown said that
not
you wouldn't be able to
American.
trespass over the Appalachian Mountains to
Hmm.
speculate on land.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to trespass into Indian territories. It was basically a proclamation to try to keep the peace between the settlers on the East Coast and the Indiana territories, which is like the 5 states right now that we call the Midwest. Okay, and those were Indian territories. And Indianapolis means capital of the Indians because the Indians had been confederated into a tribe of union, a union of tribes
Really?
through through Tecumseh. Yeah, that's what Tecumseh's mission
Very nice little
was
government
to
kind of thing set up.
yeah. So Indianapolis is actually called the capital of the Indians because this was actually the capital of the Indians of the confederated tribes of the Maumee, of the Delaware, of the Munsee, of the Shawnee, of the Cherokee, of the Cree down south. So you had a confederation of Indians that were united in trying to prevent the onslaught of the colonies coming over the mountains. So the king gave his royal proclamation of 1763. Well, George Washington, being he was a land company owner, and a lot of these other people were wealthy land company owners, Washington conspired and sent in another British officer named Crawford into the Appalachians, into Cherokee territory, and told him if he get caught to say that he was squirrel hunting, but his mission was to uh, survey the land and make a map of it because once they had the map of the land, then they could sell the land regardless of who owns it because they have it actually measured and surveyed, so it's theirs because they have the copyright on the map.
That's crazy. It's a stupid. Yeah, but continue. Yeah,
Yeah,
these
but
guys are
that's how
crazy.
they
They've
do.
been scheming stuff from the get-go. It's clear that trickled into the economics, the banking system of this country, everything. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so Washington basically conspired against the Royal Proclamation, committed treason. Crawford got caught by the Cherokee and they burned him at the stake and sent his people back to Washington to let him know that this is what happens when you disobey the King's Royal Proclamation and you come into our lands. Okay, especially when you're trying to speculate and take our lands. Okay, so when Washington got the news of it, he said, "The curse of heaven is upon me." He goes, "The die is set. There is no going back." That is what caused your American Revolution because Washington would have been found guilty of treason and strung up by his neck. And he had no other choice but to take up arms then against Britain. And the Vatican and the French were more than happy to have somebody like Washington to finance him and to try to use him to overthrow the British, the Protestant crown, and establish a revived Roman Empire here in America. To establish a new constellation. And let me run right back to that. I
Constellation.
talked about the
That's
Babylonian
what's
Foundation. Okay, well,
constellation.
yeah, and that's why when you hear them talk about the flag in Washington D.C., they talk about a new constellation. Check this out. The Egyptians, okay, you had the Babylonian Foundation, and even the Egyptians used a 7 by 7 Mercury square for the foundation of their pyramid,
Mm-hmm.
13 acres. Okay, they knew about the foundation and how it opens up a door to the underworld. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, they would build the buildings. The 3 pyramids in Giza are aligned just like the 3 stars in Orion's belt.
Right.
What
What's
they did is they replicated the heavens here on earth. That way, whoever made that empire, whoever built that empire, was not only a man, but he was a god because he'd brought heaven down to earth and replicated on earth that which is in heaven. So if he ruled those three
Just
pyramids, then he ruled those three stars. So that was his constellation. Well, Washington, having this information, and a lot of people say, well, you can't blame George Washington for the apotheosis painting in the rotunda because that happened after he was dead. Okay, well, that's fine. But he did design the city itself, and the city itself is more offensive than the actual painting of the apotheosis because it's actually a reality of a city built for the apotheosis to make him a deity. And the three stars in Washington, D.C., the White House, the Capitol building, and the Washington Monument, all three of those sit in the Federal Triangle, and all three of those replicate the three stars of Virgo constellation.
Oh, so they don't replicate Orion's belt; they replicate something else in the sky.
Well, see, the thing is, that constellation had already been claimed
Claimed.
by the Egyptian pharaoh. That was his domain. So Washington, if he's going to be godlike like the Egyptians and the Babylonians, he had to have his own constellation. And that's why everything is in the image of the triple goddess, because these three stars of Virgo replicating the White House and the National Monument and the Capitol building, those
That's what
three
it's all
are the
about. Just the three stars of Virgo. It doesn't have a cool name like Orion's belt.
No, it's a well, Washington got the better end of the deal here because he's got he basically he set up shop in my domain. Let's put it that way.
You're saying that because you're an Indian, American Indian.
No, no, that's on the earthly level. I'm on a different level. It's
Spiritual
it's
level.
like it's like I'm in charge for security of a certain area and somebody snuck in and I'm here to show how it was snuck in and basically close that door
Right.
before they even have access
Dude,
to get into it.
good on
In
you.
other words, in the
Somebody.
war in heaven, there's other ways that the enemy comes in, and
Right.
it's good to know those locations and have them posted up at those spots before they do actually make it
Yeah.
complete
Can
and
you
use
give
it.
me a map of locations like that?
What's that?
Can you provide a map of locations like that or something or because
Oh,
yeah.
it's all on YouTube. I got the three stars and the whole purpose of the way the city was built. You got the horizontal, okay? That's Osiris. You got the vertical, and that's Isis. And then you got the angle, and that's their son Horus. And that's what the Federal Triangle is. It replicates the three gods of Egypt.
Now let me say some. Let me take it to this Stargates, right? I've watched some of your videos and stuff about. We've had conversations about Stargates. Is it? Am I correct in saying that a Stargate can be just as simple as a drawing that you make on a piece of paper, and that's a Stargate?
No, it's got to be more complex than that. It's got to be an actual house or a dwelling place or a temple. It's got to be fitting of a god. You just couldn't draw a portal and have it work. You would have to have it at a prime location. And they believe that everything, there's a lot of influence from the stars onto Earth. Everything that they built, they dedicated on a certain day, on a certain time, on a certain year for
Is
the sole purpose of making sure that it matched up with what was going on in the heavens. They're all into star worship. And when you understand what stars are, it's basically they're sun worshipers. This is the old Bel worship of old.
right.
It's the old Egyptian sun worship. It's the old Babylonian star worship. It's all the same thing. It's like Allah in Islam. It's the moon god. And that's basically when you understand these three stars of Virgo and why you have
Not
in
a
New
big
York City, you have the goddess Liberty, which she represents the sun. In Washington, D.C., you have the moon goddess, which represents, the chick on the Capitol, that's the moon goddess. And in Indianapolis on the monument downtown on Monument Circle, that's the earth goddess, which is victory. So you have liberty, victory, and freedom. These three goddesses, they're the triple goddess. They're on the house mural inside the house chambers and I got posted all the different references to where the cold hard facts is the God in which we trust is actually Allah, and it's not the
Let's
Islamic
that
Muhammad Allah. It's
you
the pre-Islamic Allah.
you don't trust Allah, right?
And no, I don't trust moon gods or star gods or
Right. Yeah. I just want to
gods
say,
that
for the sake of anyone listening back, yeah. You're saying that government, behind all the scenes, the government is setting everyone up to worship Allah. That's behind the scenes. That's who is,
yeah, your great seal of authority, the eye.
right.
You have a what you have is you have a solar disk, which is the pupil with the dot in the middle, and then you have the eyelid, which is the crescent moon, and it's inside the triangle, which represents the earth. The Phoenicians, the Bell worshippers who actually sacrificed their children, I used to do archaeological studies, and the stelae they got, the monuments and the altars or whatnot. There was on the altar where they sacrificed their babies, um, the image that we have on our Great Seal, because that's called the face of Baal or the revelation of Baal. Now, see, what's neat is on your Great Seal you have the eye and the pyramid, and on the other side you have the eagle. If you draw a triangle and then you put the crescent turned upside down with the points pointing up, and
Right.
then you put the solar disk on top of that, it makes a winged or an outstretched arms type image, which is his consort. That's called the revelation of Baal. The eye inside the triangle is called the face of Baal. Okay, so the Canaanites referred to it as Baal. Okay, the Arabs refer to it as Allah. Okay, and he was the supreme pagan deity. The Greeks referred to him as Pan, which means all, which is, he incorporates everything, light, dark, good, evil, male, female. It's a conglomeration of all opposites. He's the God of all things. That's what spells goat, and that's what the image is, and that's what the Greeks determined it. The Egyptians called him Min, M-I-N,
Men.
and it's all the same thing. It's the fertility god, and it's the ultimate god. And the bottom line is the God in which we trust, okay, according to your own government that has officially and publicly declared George Washington to be God. And that's in your nation's capital, in the rotunda, which means Holy of Holies. There's George Washington sitting on the throne, seated on the rainbow, as he who mounts the clouds, seated on the rainbow, surrounded by his host and his heavenly host, which in the case of the Washington, D.C. capital, is the pagans' pantheon. So here's America talking about we're a Christian nation, but yet all the honor as far as our technology, our advances, our production, all that is credit is given to the Romans pagan pantheon. And if you look in the rotunda, you'll see that each god and goddess
Honda.
is being given credit for something that God was supposed to give to us, but we're giving these pagan deities the praise and honor and glory which belongs to God. So basically, Washington's stealing from God and giving it to the pagan pantheon. And this is what I'm talking about as far as the age of great deception, that even the elect would be deceived because
If it's
I
possible.
was raised in a Christian family. My parents were pastors of a church. We had a church of our own. And, you know, growing up, I have never heard, and even still to this day, never heard one Christian pastor condemn the fact that we have a person in the nation's capital
I haven't either.
depicting himself as being God,
Yeah. I think
or the pagan pantheon for that
Mike
matter.
Hogard. Mike Hogard might have. If you haven't seen him, check him out. But he's from St. Louis. He might have. He's the only. He's yeah. He's the
Well,
only
you know what I'm talking about. All these guys on TV, you think somebody would be having a problem with, the one that they always are singing the praises to and quoting. You got, people say, well, George Washington said this about the Bible, and Abraham Lincoln said this about the Bible. It's like, yeah, and George Bush said that about the Bible, and Obama said that about the Bible. They'll tell you anything they want to hear, but that don't make them believers.
right.
You can't say you're a Christian and then give assistance to Antichrist, which Islam is, you
Don't
know.
listen to what they say. Watch what they do. Finds a
Hmm.
quote by George Washington that says he likes God or whatever, but if you go downtown, you find that everyone is worshiping this guy. Yeah, that's crazy. So that's why I think we just, back to what do we do about this, the whole situation. The time is kind of, we all feel like time may be winding down, and maybe it's not. But get this information out, and then two, have the solution. It's like, hey, here's what we think the solution is, because a lot of people. That's Mike Hogard again said the other day. Right now, especially after this gay marriage thing, it's going to polarize the country, which is what they've been trying to do forever. The gay marriage thing might do it, but I don't know. Maybe it won't. But the game, like, there's a lot of people that don't really buy into that whole thing, And if someone sticks out their neck and says, hey, I'm the guy, hey, I'm not down with this, whatever, we're against this, a lot of people will probably follow. Case in point, I was driving yesterday on 31, US 31, racetrack. People race on that street for some reason, but there's these people had these signs that were like, we're impeach Hillary, da da da, like all this stuff. No, remember Benghazi. And it was it. They didn't have any literature. They didn't know why they were there. They just were set up to demonstrate that they didn't agree with what's going on. And so, I stopped, took pictures of them. It was like, what do you guys have for information? They didn't have any. They said they had a Facebook page. But it's cool that here on the south side of Indianapolis, that's kind of popping up. But yeah, it took this gay marriage thing to get people out of their houses protesting, something. But so anyway, please continue. People are like, oh, what's the point of listening to this conspiracy stuff? Well, wake people up, wake yourself up.
Well, the whole thing about this information is it's going to shake people up to the reality, and that's why I like to show exactly what the truth of things are, because once they realize the reality of evil, then hopefully they'll realize that there's also a reality of good. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Because right now a lot of people's like good and evil, saint and blah blah blah. But if you're talking about, advanced civilized technological, you know, uh, government that said, they were justified in giving genocide to the Indians because they were ignorant, superstitious savages. And these guys are building stuff that the Egyptians and the Babylonians built for superstitious mumbo jumbo. I mean, you got a pagan pantheon in your nation's capital. Your national monument is an erect phallic symbol, the erect penis of your god of earth.
Right.
Okay.
Monument.
Christian nation, right?
Picture it.
Uh-huh.
Let's get a picture of the giant penis. Yeah, like that's happens every day in this country because of what you're talking about, and that's just a huge deception. Like I mean, that from the ground up, that's sexual perversion. Why are we so obsessed with sex in this country? Like you're saying here, we have giant penises. In every nook and cranny.
Well, it's the abomination which brings forth the desolation. It's more evidence of Washington proving that he's the God of earth, because only a God of earth would be able to have sex with the Queen of Heaven.
Mm,
Okay, and that's the whole thing about these obelisks and these phallic symbols. The Washington Monument sits exactly where Virgo's vajayjay goes once a year, so he's actually making intercourse with Virgo
constantly.
once a year.
Virgo, her anatomy, her vagina crosses right over this giant phallic symbol, which is the
It sits right on top of the phallic and stays there for a couple of days. So,
that's quite a long sexual experience. Boom. So yeah,
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
so
That's
basically it's Bel worship and it's a
I mean,
fertility worship and it's sort of like Pan, the god of earth, and set
exactly
himself up as that.
what. So what the Queen of Heaven, right? I've heard that they're trying to, the Catholic Church is trying to make, or whoever's infiltrated Catholic Church, Satan is trying to make Mary the Queen of Heaven. What's the Queen of Heaven? Is there a Queen of Heaven, or is it just masculine heaven?
Well, according to all the star worshippers and the Egyptians or whatnot, there's Venus, which was the queen of heaven. Venus and Mars. That's why you have Venus and Mars. Venus and Mars is their god and goddess of Rome, and that was the Queen of Heaven. I mean, it's just like the Virgin and the
Yeah.
Child. You got Egyptian statues of the Virgin and the Child. You see what I'm saying? So the things that people had, and people tell me, well, the Babylonians have a flood story, and the Egyptians have a story of a virgin birth and all this stuff. And it's like, that's why you need to understand that when you read the stars and know how to see the stars, everything that was created, the story is told in the heavens. So before it actually happens, if somebody's able to get that story and claim that story, that's what Christ said. Anyone who comes before me is a thief. Anyone who comes after me, claiming me, is a liar. So yeah, there's other stories that you
Huh.
know predate the own story, but you got to understand that where do they get their information from? Well, they got it from the stars, because when the
Yeah.
creation Big Bang happened, everything that was, and it can be pretty much foretold and seen in the heavens.
I like what you just said. That's why Jesus said, and he said, everyone that came before me, what do you say, a thief, everyone after me is a liar. So he said, basically, anyone else is talking about this stuff. If you hear someone else saying, oh, there was a flood story before, don't worry about it. If you hear someone say that, don't worry about it. And that's this whole zeitgeist thing. Zeitgeist came around. I was hooked into it. A lot of people were. And that's the whole big first part of it is brainwash people to think that Jesus is not exist. He doesn't exist because it's an illogical fallacy. It's just start numbering. It's the second the movie starts, which sucks because the other two parts are fairly okay. But Jesus is just like like you just said. Whatever, all of them. Jesus is just like all of them. And it's like, there's 70 different things. I mean, a lot of that's not true. And even the stuff that is true, the Bible's answer to that is, don't worry about it. And yeah, the Satan. So Satan had people. Satan sent demons or whatever to Earth to tell humans that start a religion based on a virgin birth before Christ was born. Do you think that's what's going on?
Well, that that and the fact that a lot of people don't realize the mystery of God, and there's a different people that have different opinions on what the mystery of God is. And to me, the mystery of God is pretty much what it says, the mystery of God. And the reason the mystery of God is important, it says In the last days, before the seventh angel shall sound, the mystery of God should be complete as he's revealed to his servants, the prophets. So the mystery of God is going to be revealed and is revealed in your ears right now, if you so accept it as such, because people need to understand where God came from. Because when I was growing
Right.
up, it's like, okay, there's God and he's a father, and he loved the world so much that he sent his son to pay the price. And I thought, well, that 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 that
So,
this did not settle with me that God would send his own son to do that. God would do it himself. Okay. Now just now follow me for brief because this mystery God thing is real important. If there's anything that should be talked about, this is it.
all right, yeah,
Be-
I'm all ears.
Because once the mystery of God is out, there's pretty much, that's the end because the mystery of God has been complete as he's revealed. Okay.
Yeah.
Christ was to receive the inheritance of the Father. Okay. Now, dig this. Christ, when he died, was going to receive the inheritance of his Father before the world begun. And what was the inheritance of his Father? To sit in his Father's throne and be king forever, to be God.
Mm.
Okay. Now, this is how it happened. If I ask you, John, which came first, the chicken or the egg, we could debate about that. But if I said, John, which came first, the physical realm or the spiritual realm, what would your answer be?
Oh, and that's something I'd like to ask you. There's no way to tell now. That last time
Oh,
you
oh, yes, yes. There's a way to tell that. It's the mystery of God.
my answer, and I would like to finish because it comes back to what you said on our last show. If you read the first chapter of Genesis, and then you go to and you read, and then after you read that, then you go read the last verse in the end, the last part of the Bible.
Chapter,
Read the first
last
part.
chapter of Revelation, and then read the second chapter of Genesis.
So
You'll
once you say
see
that to me, that makes me think I have no idea because time is like you just said. The last has to happen before the first does, and so once you threw my,
exactly.
so
And
I
that,
can't even answer.
and
I don't know.
and see, well, I won't put you on the spot, but I'll just tell you this: I have asked pastors, I have asked theologians, Bible scholars, everybody that knows everything there is to know about their religion.
Right.
I asked them that question: which came first, the spiritual or the physical? And you know what they say?
What do they say?
Well, they say naturally the spiritual, because God created everything, and so you had to have heaven, and you had to have God, and you had to have everything there first before He could create the physical realm. Before He said, "Let there be light," and make the earth, right?
That
So
is,
everybody says the spiritual realm, but the Bible specifically says no. To the contrary, it says, "Howbeit that which is physical comes first, then after which the spiritual." That's why Christ said, "Before Abraham was, I am." And people didn't get that. They thought, "What? What's he mean? Before Abraham was, I am."
right.
Okay? Now check it out. The word was in the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant. Israel kept it in, it's like an incubator. That word became flesh and dwelt among man, the scripture says. In other words, that word, that law that was in that Ark of the Covenant was like an incubator for that which was going to become flesh, be embodied into a virgin, and become a flesh being called Christ. Okay? So the virgin birth, you had Christ. Christ became a physical man. He went forth fulfilling all things. And also saying things like, "Before Abraham was, I am," just to give you a little taste of what the mystery of God was all about. Because when that physical body hung on the cross and was crucified, that when that blood left his body, he said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Because he felt God leaving him. He felt that life leaving him because all life is in the blood. So when the blood was leaving him, his life was leaving him. He was being forsaken. Now, when he hung his head and died and said, "It is finished," okay, when you say the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, they're both one. When he said, "It is finished," and he hung up his head and he gave up his ghost, that spirit, that life that was in him,
Right.
where did it go? It went back before Abraham. It went back before Moses. It went back before Adam and Eve. It went back before the world was. It went back until there was nothing but utter darkness. And
Or
there
did it
was the
go to
spirit of
that
the
realm
crucified
time
Christ in,
exist?
what's that?
Or did it just go to a dimension? And maybe it's probably both, but dimension that time doesn't exist. He left the cube. He left the whole box. He got back out of it or whatever. Is that
No,
another
his
same
spirit, he's supposed to receive the inheritance he had with his father before the world began.
non-timeline basis, right? I mean, God doesn't exist on our timeline. He's outside of it, right? So
Yeah,
he
and
exists outside of our time, and then he enters our time, dies on the cross, and then comes back outside of time. Right? That sounds like a different way of saying the same thing you're saying. Yes or
no,
no?
he creates time. In other
He
words, his
creates time.
spirit, he's supposed to receive the inheritance he had with his father before the world began. Okay, so when his spirit left his body, where else would it go but back to his father before the world began to receive his inheritance, right?
Right. Okay. You're right. Yeah.
Okay,
Luke.
so his spirit goes back before anything was created until nothing there was, but nothing but darkness. So there you have the spirit of the crucified Christ in nothing but darkness.
Now, is that biblical that it says that he went to darkness? You know, that he went back to zero, or is it just one of his parables and you're interpreting it?
It's not going to say that if it's going to be a mystery of God that's supposed to be revealed in the end times. In other words, it's not going to say
Fair
Christ's spirit left him and went back before Abraham, before Isaac, before Jacob, before Adam, before Eve, before the
enough.
world was. It's not going to tell you that. The
Yeah.
mystery of God revealed tells you that. In
Right,
other
and
words,
that's what
if
you're
it was
saying.
written somewhere, it would be, you could read it 1,000 different ways. I'm just telling you where that spirit came from. The spirit of Christ, when it went back before the beginning, before anything was, there was nothing but darkness. Now think of this: is if you're Christ, okay, and you died on the cross, and your spirit left, and you're traveling through time. You're going back through time because you got to go back to the beginning before the world was to receive your inheritance, right? So he's
Right.
going before anything was, and there's nothing but darkness. So what does he say?
Well, what did he say?
Let
Why
there be
stick?
light.
What?
When he said, "Let there be light,"
Light.
if you can
Goes
understand the
back up
energy,
and he starts
if,
it over again. He says, "Let there be light."
exactly. If you can
Insane.
understand the energy of an atom that is split, the energy that's released from just an atom that is split, consider the energy of actual the essence of light splitting at that moment when there was nothing but darkness, and
Right.
in the darkness was God, the Spirit of Christ, the crucified Christ. That was a spirit in the darkness. He's supposed to receive his inheritance. There's nothing but darkness. And if there's nothing but darkness, what's the first thing you're going to do?
Create
Let there
light.
be light. When he said, "Let there be light," that is what caused what we know as the Big Bang Theory,
Right.
the explosion of energy that caused everything to spin into its existence.
Why is he going
Because
to let there be light again? I mean, doesn't he want to exit this whole loop? Why would he say that again? Why would he say, "Let there be light" again? You know?
you're looking at it as if he said, "Let there be light" in the beginning, which he did. That was the
Yeah.
first time he had ever said it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
I do actually grasp what you're saying. I do actually get it. Yeah.
Okay, just follow along and you will. He said, "Let there be light." Boom. Christ was known as the Word and the Light.
So do you
Okay?
feel like this is a revelation that God has given you? Is that kind of what you're
Abs-
doing
ab-
right now?
Absolutely. It blew my mind. Like I said, I was raised in a church and I had all these questions, and it came to me where God came from. And it's not that there was a being that sat on the throne and said, "You know what? I'm going to send my son,"
Right.
instead of me doing it myself. No, this is what happened. The Spirit said, "Let there be light." Boom. There's the Big Bang. That's what happened when everything just boom came into existence because you had the light and the Word, that Spirit, speaking the Word, which was light. And that's when there was light because that's when the Big Bang occurred. And he said, now see, there's the Spirit of the crucified Christ that said, "Let there be light." Boom. Now you had the Spirit of Christ who had just called light into being as the creator. He had received his inheritance as God. No man can see God because he's spirit. Okay,
Right.
so there he was. He's spirit. Now he's God. He spoke light into existence. He spoke the word into existence. So now you have the spirit of Christ crucified, God, and the word, which is light. So now there's two here. Okay, so you have Christ, which has become God, who
Mm.
spoke the word, which was light, into existence. And that light was the life of the world.
Right.
And that's why he said, "Let us make
Mm.
man in our image according to our likeness." Because now
That's
you
so
had a
crazy.
father and you had a son, because the son
So
was
weird.
now the word, the spoken word. And that word became written on two tablets of stone given to man as the law, as the word of God. That was why you have doublets. And see, everybody, even the Jewish scholars say, "I don't understand why the Bible has doublets in it." And it's a story that happens twice. Why are all these stories happening twice? Why is Genesis chapter 1 tell a story and then Genesis chapter 2 say the same story, but a little bit different, but it's the same story. Why are these doublets there?
Well, same
It's
thing. People
because it happened twice, but it only
done
happened
the
once.
same thing, but they don't add up, so the Bible's stupid.
They just don't comprehend the reason for the doublets. Is like when I said, read the first chapter of Genesis, read the last chapter of Revelation, and then read the second chapter of Genesis. You'll see exactly that time is not on a plane. It's not on a traveling plane. It's a cycle. And
Right.
the end has to happen before the beginning.
And that's
And it's
pretty
just sort
cool that you gained that. Well, first of all, you said that's a revelation that God gave you. A lot of people mess around with like New Age stuff, and like they use works, they use these gimmicks, they just go any other way but just directly going to God and reading His Word to find out stuff like that. But you go out and take LSD trips and stuff. And you come back from them, and you're like, oh, I got this revelation. You're saying that you got this mind blowing, insane knowledge, by reading the Bible, going to church, and then God just told you this stuff because you're willing to listen. Is that right?
if you ask, you will receive. And
Right.
he's a loving God. And as his children, he wants us to have everything that we could even dream and desire of. It's just our priorities are mixed up and we think materialistic things when it's really things that are eternal, things that set us free, things that are good, things that benefit us and prosper us. Uh,
Right.
Man's always looking for things that are meaningless. And like King Solomon, who obtained everything, said, vanity, vanity, it's all vanity.
Right.
It's truth is the most important, most valuable thing there is because God is truth. And that's the
He
word, and
just
that's the life, and
he
that's
is.
freedom.
Like he is true. It's not like he likes truth. He just literally is. And that he was it you that was saying last time or whatever. He just physically cannot be around sin. Like he just like there's something about it, or is that you or
And
something like?
that's why, check this out, because like you said, that's truth. And that's why they built their empire in perpetual sex, because God couldn't sit around and watch the sex because it'd be like watching porn. So they build their city to where it's perpetual orgy time so they
Right.
can do it behind their back. It's like when Satan entered into heaven, God said, "How did you get here?" Because there's supposed to be like a door and there's only one way into heaven, and Satan appears some other way. He climbed up some other way.
Right. So wait, what
And
are you doing,
God's
Satan?
all knowing. He's like, "How did you get in here?" Well, obviously Satan was doing something behind his back, knowing that God can't look upon these things and face these things. He was going to do something to where God couldn't look at it. That way he could do it behind his
God
back.
can't look at it. God does not see you or anybody masturbating or whatever sin that whether or not sin masturbating is a sin. I don't know what it is, but let's say a sin. Fornication. Does God watch you fornicate, or you, the proverbial you, me, anybody that has fornicated? He doesn't watch that. Is that what you're saying?
No, it would be like watching porn.
That's
The judge of your heart is
crazy.
you.
Far out.
Nobody knows you like you. Nobody can know things like you know things. So the judgment that people fear, it's not going to be as, oh, I wonder if God saw this or God saw that. You knew about it, right? You're going to be your own judge. It's your heart that weighs you.
Yeah, I've never even considered like, oh, did God know about that? He's all knowing from the, yeah, from the get. Yeah, I was raised, in the believing. I got, saved when I was 4. You know what I mean? So from there, I've been, on and off learning about this stuff. Been surrounded by my home. My parents brought me to church, all this stuff. So I've been from the get go. It sounds like you, at a young age, I was raised with this. You hear it, you just kind of soak it up, even if you don't read the Bible. If you're around it for 20, 30, 40 years, you just kind of soak it up.
As far as what God sees me, and this is my comfort, is it's like a red shower curtain, okay, that he can't see through, and it's called the blood of Christ. When I have the
Right.
blood of Christ,
That's
I am covered, and all he sees is not my sins and all my dirty. He sees that blood,
right.
and that's why that's the most precious thing there is, the most powerful thing there is, and that's why that belongs to be given the title as God, because that shed blood was actually God.
The blood was God. Was
Because the
it?
blood is in the life. All life is in the blood. And that shed blood for that sole purpose of saving mankind, that was the Spirit of God.
Do you think Christians? Do you think it's a bad idea or a sin for Christians to give blood because of that scripture? Here's the thing: a friend of mine who was raised in the same church, his dad used to say that, like, "Oh, you shouldn't be giving blood." The Bible says the blood is in life's in the blood. Don't give blood. What do you think about that, Stephen?
I think that's. I think it's a little far-fetched and far-reaching. If you're doing something good for somebody, it's it's not one of those things that you could consider a sin. What gets me is a lot of people are trying to classify what sin is you drink beer or you cuss or you smoke or you do this or you do that. This is
Right.
what the Bible
Trying to
says sin.
scramble for
Sin,
figuring out what a sin
sin,
is.
we all sin every
Right.
day, either in thought, word, or deed. Whether we like it or not, this is mortal flesh, it's corruptible. We're going to do that. But sin isn't doing those things which other people think are bad. It's Bible says sin is having the opportunity to do good and not doing it. Now think
The
about
Bible
that.
says, let's take it. Let's rewind that. The Bible says sin is the opportunity to do something good and not doing it. Is that correct?
That is sin. Yes.
Where does it say that? Where is that in the Bible? Just for
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look it up in Google. But when I say something like that, it's in the Bible. I'm not saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. That's in the Bible. It's in the
because
Bible. If I say it's in the Bible, I can look it up and give you all that. But I'm not one of those who can,
you would. So
approach.
you're saying take it on faith. If you say it's in the Bible, it is.
It is. There's
Okay.
one thing I don't lie about, and that's what's in the Bible because, you can prove all things sooner or later.
just for our listeners' enjoyment, sin. So what? Yeah, I have it written down here. What is sin? Sin and or yeah, you
Sin
said sin.
isn't just the things you do that other people consider a wrong or a trespass. Sin is having the opportunity to do good or do right and not doing it. In other words, if you see somebody without a coat, and they're cold and they're shivering, and you got a coat, and you're like, let them deal with it. That's the opportunity to do good.
James 4:17. Does that sound?
I'm not quite sure, but I know
If
it's in there, and if you look it
knows
up, you'll
good
find it.
God to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. Boom. Sounds like you were
Boom.
right, right? That sounds like a or no.
One thing I don't want to be right. One thing I don't want to be wrong about is the scripture and the word because there's enough of that going on.
I put you to the test. It sounds like you were right. You said, "Oh, it's in the Bible somewhere." Looks like it is. It's James 4:17, guys. If anyone, and this is, let me not read the NIV, right? What Bible do you read,
Oh,
Stephen?
I go King James just simply because it clarifies some words a little bit more clear for me. But like the Holy Spirit, that's what his gift is to you. And it's that same life that he had within him that gives honor and glory to the Father, even though we are sons of God. That's the
Mm-hmm.
proper order of things because you humble yourself to be exalted. You don't exalt yourself. The only way you can exalt yourself is by first humbling. That's why he said you can't be a master until you're a servant first.
If who wants to gain his life have to lose it.
That's right.
Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Do ye
Now
think?
check that for a second. You said
Yep.
anybody who's a friend of the world is an enemy of God, but yet the foundation of your faith says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son." Now think about that. How do you reconcile those two?
Um,
Because the world in inference to one means the creation, and the world in the other is the worldly structure or the will of man.
I say it again, please, because I got distracted. There was a noise in the room. What's the question again? Because it's a very good one, and this is the type of thing I want to talk about on this show. Is other people's problems. Like they come up with this, like, oh, so therefore the Bible is not correct. Not necessarily. Let's take a step back. It does. It's like, oh, it's contradictory. These are like koans in the Buddhism. They have
Right.
koans, like one hand clapping. It's a koan or whatever that's what they call it. We call it parables and stuff. Jesus says them left and right all the time. Almost everything out of his mouth is something that you can't just. You should just go think about it for 2 weeks before you even. So yeah, what was the question again? And I will try to answer it with my feeble mind.
Well, the whole thing the verse you read was talking about those who love the world or an
James.
enemy of God, kind
Right.
of thing. And the foundation of Christianity is for God so loved the world. So how do you reconcile those two verses that he
God,
says, if you love the world, you're an enemy, but yet he loved the world so much that he gave his son. So,
well, just the literal, logical conclusion is it's okay for God to love the world, but not us. He's
well,
not telling us.
the world he's talking about is his creation, and the world he's talking about us not loving is the will of man. And that's basically the two forces you got down here. And that's the one of the biggest deceptions right there is saying the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. And you see Washington with his Masonic gear on and his trowel, And it's got that quote underneath the trowel saying the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. That we are all sons and daughters of God because we were all made in his image. And that's the biggest deception there is because there's two types of beings down here. And
So
there's a war going on
what
down
are
here.
the two types again?
What's that?
What's the two types?
The sons of light and the sons of darkness. The
Light.
sons from above and the sons from below. The sons of light and the sons of darkness. The sons of the bondwoman and the sons of the free woman. Okay, the free woman is from above, which is Jerusalem. The sons of the bondwoman are the sons or offspring of Ishmael, which was the will of man. In other words, you have the will of man. Some were born of spirit before the world began. In other words, you and I have no doubt, are sons of God. We were born of the Spirit of God. We was born of the will of God before the world began. There are others down here who are sons of darkness, who are sons of the earth, who are the sons of the bondwoman. In other words, they are born of the will or the lust of man. In other words, all these creations down here, all mankind, are not all brothers and sons and daughters of God. That's why Christ said, "You are of your father, the devil, because it's his words you hear and obey." Okay? He specifically and distinctly showed that there's two types of beings down here, those that were born of the will of God before the world began. Now, you could be just born, from secular parents and born of the will of your parents, okay? But God made it possible for you to have a blood transfusion to become a son of God. So even the sons of darkness or whatnot, you can't say, well, it's not really fair. They were made, by the will of man, therefore they didn't have a chance to be sons of God. It's just not fair. No, he said, whosoever will. Right now, if you was born by a rape or a lust of a man, and you're a child and you're a son of flesh, you have the opportunity to have a blood transfusion, be born again, and be a son of God. And therefore, you were born of the will of God before the world began. If
That's
you
crazy.
understand the mystery of God and how that works. So no, everybody has a fair shot down here. So I ain't feeling bad for nobody as far as saying, well, I was born of the will of man and therefore I didn't have a chance because I'm a son of flesh. No, you could be a son of God. It's pretty simple. Just subject yourself, humble yourself, and accept his sacrifice and his offer and
It says
capitalize on it.
anybody who humble yourself in the sight of the Lord will lift you up. It's,
Absolutely.
the Bible, it can be as complex or as simple as you want, but the salvation message is pretty much that. Just humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. He'll direct your steps. He'll tell you what to do. Just give it a shot, right? If you're, what does someone do if they want to be shot of light? What do they do, Stephen?
All they got to do is realize that the real God, the true and living God, is a good God, a loving God, a God that is good, that cares, that loves you, that forgives you. And all you have to do is just show some appreciation and be thankful that somebody was willing to pay your price that you're guilty of, that you should have to pay, that he's already paid it for you. And all you got to do is just accept the word. Read John 3:16. I always tell people read the first chapter of John because to me that was the revelation. That was the revelation that spun off the mystery God to me. That in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same as was in the beginning, it says, and it kind of like repeats itself so you comprehend that in the beginning was the Word. That was all there was in the darkness and everything, and there was nothing but the Spirit of the crucified Christ. He was the Word, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word is God, and the Word is the God to come. If you read Revelation, when everybody's talking about these different names of what name do we use? I use Yah, okay,
You use God.
because
You call him God. What about Jah?
well, see, the J is not the actual Hebrew. It wasn't never Joshua. It was Joshua. It was never Elijah. It was Elijah. Okay,
Elijah.
because they didn't
No,
have the
hey,
J. And I'm saying people call Jesus, and I ain't got no problem against people saying Jesus. Before people go, oh, he's against
so
you. It's
Jesus,
just
right?
that's the Greek. That's just the Greek translation of a name, Yeshua. Now, if somebody called me Stefana or Stefanovich or something like that, I might not heed to them as quick as somebody said, "Hey, Steve," because
Right.
use the name that I use.
Stefanovic, come over here. What you just call me?
Well, it's just silly to be so adamant about a name that the Greeks translated. If he said there's power in this name, you got to understand first you got to understand the power of word, especially spoken word. If you can understand the creation was created by speaking word, then you got to understand that word and the sounds and the tones and the vibrations and the energy in those words are powerful. So if he gave us a name like Yah to use because his name is Yahshua, his name was Jehovah, you know, his name was Yahweh. That prefix YAH is Yah. And then people in church, they think you're speaking in tongues or speaking a foreign language. They're like, oh, Yah, what's that? You say hallelujah. Every church every day says hallelujah. What's that mean? Praise be unto you, Yah. So you have no problem saying Yah when you say hallelujah, but I use the name of Yah because there's power in that name and the demons flee that name. And you can use Jesus all you want to, and it might work for you, but I guarantee you, use the name that he gave us to use, you'll find there's some power in that name.
But there's also power in the name of Jesus, right? I mean, there's power in Jesus, or is there not? The proof of the
Well,
pudding is
absolutely. It's like intentions, okay? It's like you can be a baby and you
say,
can drink
no
milk.
matter what you
Or
call him, just that you call on him. That's the only thing that matters, right? Your intention matters
no,
more than the actual mumbo jumbo of the exact wording phrase of the
yeah,
syllables, right?
like I said, I'm not knocking anybody that uses Jesus. That was the Greek translation of him. But just remember, his mama never called him Jesus. He never called himself Jesus. His disciples didn't call him Jesus, and
But
he
did they?
didn't give us the name Jesus to use as far as having power. Now, sure, you'll get his attention, and sure he'll answer your prayers and this, that, and the other. It's the difference to me is what I'm saying is there's babies that drink milk and there's adults who chew meat. They're both humans. Okay, you see what I'm saying? But they're
Right.
just a little bit different as far as what they're capable of. And if you're satisfied with going to church on Sunday and saying Jesus and asking questions like God, why is this happening to me, and why does God allow these things to happen, then so be it. But if you want nourishment, you want to advance, you want to be an adult with strength that you can do things, then use the name that He gave you for the power
The
to
name
do
is,
those things.
what's the name?
Yeah.
It's just
Why?
Yah, straight up Yah. It's not Yahshua. It's not Yamahima Shemek or whatever. It's Yah.
Well, Jesus, the Greek translation of Jesus comes from the word Yahshua. That was his name, Yahshua. It's just like
Yeah,
Elijah,
so
which
Joshua, right? It's
actually,
not Jesus. It's Joshua. You may as well call the God Joshua, right?
yeah, it's actually Yahshua with a
I've actually
Y.
heard that. So,
It's like Elijah. Okay, Elijah. You've heard of Elijah, the
right.
prophet Elijah. His name was actually Elijah. And what does that mean? What does the name Elijah mean? My
Nothing about
God is Yah.
my
My
God.
God,
That's
yeah. Now think about it. The biggest
good to
prophet
know.
that all the church people know, the biggest prophet all people know in the Bible is Elijah. And
Right. Yep.
it's
Yeah.
Elijah. And if they understood that, his name actually is the power because I have a really,
Joshua.
really big thing about names because there is power in names and names are as good as gold and all that because there is power in names. Elijah meant my God is Yah. So if
No.
Elijah's God was Yah and it was good enough for him, then it's good
Yeah,
enough for me.
right. I could dig. I can't dig that. You said dig this. I could definitely dig that, Steven. I do. We're coming up against a break here. We're trying to keep it professional this time. But yeah, how much more time do you have, Steven? Do you want to do another hour, or do you want to call it, or?
We can call it right now because I got some obligations I got to take care of inside the house. But then I'll
Cool.
give people time to digest this, and then if they got questions or you got some questions, and we can go over some other things because we didn't even we just got to the foundation of Babylon and actually the Egyptian, the building and the structures and the way they built it. And then you got to also remember there's Rome in there, which is the revived Roman Empire, which explains the pagan pantheon, the Roman, e probus unum and all
Mm,
the Latin stuff that's involved as far as Rome beating the Protestants and actually setting up this revived Roman Empire where they give credit to their old pagan gods or whatnot. So there's a lot of other things to discuss, but I think we pretty much covered some good things.
Not yeah. You gave us some stuff. We can't break it all off in one chew. Whatever. How you eat an elephant. But Steven, yeah, it sounds great. I'm looking forward to next week too. Thanks a lot, man. God bless. Looks like I wanted to talk about Jade Helms for 2 seconds, but I will. Looks like everything's okay. They said the 4th of July is going to go off. That doesn't happen, I don't think. Jade Helms hasn't actually started yet. Please, Steven, thanks a lot, man.
Anytime, I appreciate the opportunity. You have a good one.
Anytime, every time, Saturday night. God bless, Steven.
and that's the sign that underneath the link. These are some still pictures.
All right.
And there is pretty good story because still in the sky overhead passing. And so ultimately, a couple of different people took pictures of this, and all the pictures that appear under the video
about something similar last year,
sunset.
but
The moon's on the other side of the world.
Now, you put it in the Walmart board. What was the warm part of the experiment?
The stated goal of climate engineering is everybody wants to know why. There's a lot of answers to that question. A lot of people want to put climate engineering in this box or that box. It's not just this or that. It's this and that and any other thing. Climate modifications have been going on large scale since the late 40s. We have enough historical documentation to prove that. There are many aspects to if you look at exactly what it is, manipulation, weather systems, no speculation, not theory. We have lab tests around the world to prove this fact. So when we have these kind of programs going on, the length of time they've been going on, the effects are becoming catastrophic. Along with this program, the saturation of the atmosphere is conductive, toxic, metallic particulates. There are other elements to climate engineering that work in conjunction with that to manipulate those particulates. Most of you have probably heard of high frequency active auroral research program called the ionosphere meter. Think of cell phones dangerous. That is produced by much more than this. They use 2 to 3 dozen of these large ground-based facilities around the globe. Some of them condense 3.5 billion watts of power from the atmosphere. Available today to the atmosphere 15,000 degrees Fahrenheit or more in the ionosphere. Why would they do this? Why are they how are they modifying that? That causes changes in pressure. They can manipulate the jet stream. And now we live in a scenario where so much weather modification is going on that literally we are at the point now where we have no natural weather. When you change any part of the system, you change the entire system. And the fallout again from these programs is so immense that those in power will do anything they can to hide this for as long as they can, for obvious reasons. We have collaboration between global governments. We know this collaboration is going on. In fact, when they have climate meetings like we've had in Cancun and Copenhagen, we've noted aluminum futures increasing 25 to 30% after this meeting. We're not talking about carbon. We're making backroom deals to ramp up climate engineering even more. And these systems can only harm the planet. Just like the pharmaceutical treatment we talked about during this whole event. Take this to that, and by the way, here's 20 things that happen. The planet is no different. The downstream effects right now absolutely horrific. Who would do this? The question is, all roads lead back to those who spend the money, those who start the wars, those who can fund anything they want. We know that since 1993, the Pentagon can't account for $8.5 trillion. How do you lose $8.5 trillion? And that's simply what we know about. So those in power again can fund anything they want. All roads lead back to central bankers. That's what controls the military. How long has this been going on? Again, since the late 40s. That's a long time to manipulate the weather. Most of us here in this room have never experienced truly natural weather. The weather system is much more malleable than people have been led to believe. They've been led to believe you can't control the weather, you can't harm the weather, you can't alter the weather. This is an absolute lie. Why would they manipulate these systems? Again, solar radiation management, the stated purpose, the primary stated purpose is to block some of the sun's incoming thermal radiation, including what's called global dimming. We know now from science studies that 20-25% of the sun's direct rays no longer reach the surface of the planet. That's how much direct sunlight is being eliminated. We know we have weather warfare going on around the globe. Any form of climate modification is weather warfare. Any form